What is up, everybody? Welcome to episode 22 of Into the Necrosphere. My name is Jackie Smith, your host, as always, and joining me on today's show is going to be a man whose presence on this podcast has been long overdue. I am talking about Matt Wilcock, former guitarist of Akercocke, now with the mighty Antichrist Imperium. He has also played with a Berserker, a Bremelin, Belligerent Intent. He is currently in a project called Werewolves, which I suspect many people will be talking about over the coming months. It's great having him on. As I said, long overdue in my opinion. He's somebody whose guitaring I have long admired. And he's just a fucking cool dude. So I had a great conversation with him, and that is going to hopefully take up the next hour or so of your time. If you survive the hour, then stick around, because afterwards I'm going to be talking in more detail about my thoughts on the new Blaze of Perdition record. Some of you will remember that I had Pavel from Blaze of Perdition on the show last week. And if you go by week comparisons, that has actually been my second most successful show to date. So you love yourselves a bit of the old Polish black metal, it seems. The reason I didn't review the Blaze of Perdition record last week was because I had an advanced copy of it, so I had heard the album, but I actually wanted to give myself an opportunity to hear it in high resolution. And I'll explain the reasons why in the review, but there was a very specific reason why I wanted to do that before I reviewed the record. For those of you guys that are new to the show, thank you so much for checking us out. For those of you who are repeat visitors, whether you are watching on YouTube or listening on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, any of those wonderful places, please do remember to hit the subscribe button and also to follow Into the Necrosphere on social media. You can find me, unsurprisingly, at Into the Necrosphere on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. So join up, tell me what you think of the show, tell me what you would like to see more of, less of. As long as you don't want to see less of me, because that kind of defeats the purpose of the show. That is pretty much it as far as an intro this week is concerned. Right now, I will leave you for the next hour or so in the very capable hands of myself and Matt Wilcock, as we had our conversation a couple of weeks ago. One thing to say, if you're watching this on YouTube, we are back to video again for the interview. So for the ladies out there, you can behold my greatness. You could enjoy the conversation with Matt. I will shut the fuck up and get on with the interview. This has been a long time coming, this conversation, mate. So thanks for taking the time to come on. And I mean, I know you've got a shitload of stuff to talk about. So let's start with the most pressing topic, and then we'll get to your many other projects. Right. Antichrist Imperium. So Volume 3 is done. Where are you guys at with the recording, and you know what's the latest on that band?
Well, basically, we've pretty much written, well, everything's written, I guess, from a music and maybe 50-60% a lyrical sort of aspect as well. Pretty much Dave's booked in to start recording drums in April, I think it is. So I guess after that we're on quite a tight timeline after that to get the album out. So Apocalyptic Witchcraft, they're aiming for it to be released I think in September. So as long as, you know, we can sort of knuckle down and just get everything, just stay on track, I guess, and, you know, make sure everything keeps happening, then we should be all right for that. So yeah. It's just good that everything's sort of penciled in, you know, like, which I guess that's probably a difficult thing because you know, obviously there's a great amount of distance between Dave and Sam and me and Sam over here. But you know, everyone's pretty sort of proactive, and yeah, I think Dave's going to do the drums with Russ Russell, so that'll be really cool. And after that, I think me and Sam over here are going to just sort of plow forward and just try and get everything done sort of as quickly as possible. You know, it's all preparation. Like we're pretty on the money with everything. So hopefully, sort of disasters pending or whatever, it'll be a September release, which is quite exciting, so it's really good.
Very. And I mean, I would say the especially the response that you guys had to Volume 2, I was just kind of overwhelmingly positive. Do you kind of feel there's a weight of expectation on the band now? Because, you brought out the first album. No one knew what to expect. It came out and it was great. But I think the second album really sort of raised the bar for the band so significantly. How do you sort of, is that something that you've kept in mind as you've been writing and preparing to record this album?
I guess it sort of is. I mean, when we were doing the second one, there was a fair bit of sort of pressure's not really the word, because we just write songs and try and do what we do and do it the best we can and do what we like. But I think maybe at the back of my mind there was a bit of sort of stress about, bloody hell, let's try and make the second one pretty good as well, because quite a lot of people really were really into the first one, and it turned out really well. And with the first one, there was obviously there were some songs which were like nearly 10 years old at the time, and some that were like just a couple of months old. So when the first one came out, it was like, bloody hell, this turned out pretty well. This is good. And so there was a bit of, like whenever I'm doing anything musically, there's always like, in my mind, there's always this sort of thing about, it's no good, or it's good, or it's shit, or it's not shit. And it's like, it's a massive hurdle to try and overcome, like everything just, one day it's like, oh, this is really good. Sounds great. I'm really into it. And then the next day it's like, fucking hell, this is terrible. I'm fucking sick of all this. Throw my guitar out the fucking window. It all sounds awful. Yeah. And then, a couple of days later, maybe have a break. Things like, oh yeah, actually, I see where it's going. I see what's happening. So, there was, in the back of my mind, there was a bit of sort of, bloody hell, we've got to make the second one good. But to be honest, I haven't really felt that way about the third one. The third one took a while. It took a while to sort of come up with some of the material. Sam Bean over here, he's written quite a chunk of the music, which is really good, because he's got a different take on guitar and music than I do.
Yeah. So
it's a really good blend of both of our sort of stuff. I mean, he does stuff with he's got his band The Senseless, which is like this fucking mental blasting madness. But he's all the riffs are quite, I know, they're quite happy, and I've always been having a dig at him for years about stopping. You've got to stop writing happy heavy metal, because don't work. I mean, it works for him, but we've kind of met in the middle, and it's like the stuff that we've worked on together is I feel really positive about it. It's really good, and I think instead of maybe trying to sort of, it's not really right, instead of trying to better the previous one, we're just sort of doing, it's kind of some different things, There's, maybe not, instead of bettering, there's more darkness, and there's also a bit more sort of space and ambience and light even, So maybe the contrast between some of the stuff is a bit more pronounced, but, we all feel pretty good about the material, which is cool. Like, I feel good about it. I know the other guys are pretty amped about it. So yeah, it's looking good. We're all in a good place and we're all happy about it. So it's good.
Yeah. That self-criticism that you mentioned earlier, I mean, obviously to a far, far lesser degree than you've ever had, but anytime, it's probably why I never kind of got around to being, to being in a band that where I played live more than twice. I mean, I was a vocalist in one band, played live with them twice. I had probably 2-3 things going at various points, but I could never get myself to a point where I was happy with anything. Even when I was much younger, I used to love writing, and I wrote basically an 800-page novel. And I remember having worked on that for 2 years. I finished when I was about 16, and I started reading it back, and within a week, I was like, "This is the biggest load of shit that I've ever read in my life," and I deleted the entire thing. So 800 pages, 2 years worth of work gone. But my question to you is, how, in terms of self-criticism, how much of what you write or how much of what you do you throw out?
I think it's chopped and changed a bit over time, like how I sort of operate. The whole talking a bit about bloody werewolves. That's a whole sort of different way of thinking. But I think with Antichrist, it's like I might just sit on the guitar and sit down with the guitar and just sort of fuck around until I get something, that I just sit on the couch, watch TV, and play until something kind of happens. And generally, once something's there, it's like, right, now I know roughly where I am and I can build on it, or I don't think I really necessarily throw that much stuff away, but it can take quite a while to sort of accumulate a few things. And then, like if I demo some stuff up, maybe the next day I'll listen back and go, oh, fucking hell, that's terrible. Or, the arrangement's sort of wrong, or, oh, that shouldn't do that, or it should do this. Or so maybe it's just refining things over a few days. I do something like, one night write a few riffs for a song or whatever. It's like, oh, cool, and then the next day listen back to it. I usually listen back to things when I'm driving to work. I just put on my phone and just on my way to work, I listen and go, oh, that doesn't really work, or, that could be changed or whatever. So a fair bit of refining of stuff, I guess. But, like it takes a while for me to sort of get what I want. And then once I'm there, it's like, oh, cool, I'll start putting all this down. And, it sort of works. Well, sometimes it works, I guess.
Do you look back on anything that you recorded or that you wrote, in the past and kind of go, fuck, what was I thinking with that crap?
I guess maybe some of the stuff that I've done is maybe not, I don't know. I mean, if it's probably just maybe a bit immature, not immature, but just like maybe adolescent or something, like, when you're 20, you think and you act a lot differently than you do when you're, 40 or so. Yeah. So, I guess that kind of thing is reflected in what you write and what you do. There's nothing that I've written and recorded in, the last 15 years or so that I'm unhappy with, there's, or sort of don't want to hear. Like, I'm not that I bloody listen to much stuff that I've done from the past anyway, but, now and then I'll go back and listen to something and go, oh, cool, this sounds good, or bloody hell, what a bunch of cavemen,
Yeah.
It's a positive thing though, it's a positive sort of reflection on shit that you've done in past years or whatever.
Yeah, and it's growth as well. I mean, I know are you 40 already, or are you just about to turn 40?
I'm fucking 41, man.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Shit, I thought you're the same age as me. So okay, so here's a question, because I'm about to turn 40. How much? I think the question I'm trying to drive at here is, how much did you sort of reflect back on the past when you turned 40? How much do you feel like a decade has matured you as a musician and as a songwriter versus the caveman era of your youth?
In my mind, I'm probably the same, just still a fucking child, really, But I think the big difference is, house, mortgage, proper job, all that sort of stuff, when I was younger, you could sort of drop everything and go on tour or, do silly stuff. But as you get older, I'm talking about me as well. For me, it's been a little bit more sort of like, all of a sudden I seem to be slightly more stuck. Like you finally get, for me, I finally got a proper job and it sort of, you know, you get a reasonable paycheck, and it's like, bloody hell, you know, this is all right. But I don't know, musically, like, as a guitarist, I've gotten better. You know,
Yeah.
I listen to some of, like, I don't know, like lead playing and shit from years ago and think, fucking hell, it's a bit rubbish. But you know, like, you know, I just do different things, and you sort of this bigger spectrum of stuff to draw on and all that sort of stuff, you know. Same with songwriting as well, you know. Like I've said before to numerous people that, like, if I didn't play an act, like, I wouldn't fucking write music the way I do now, because, you know, like, I hung out with those dudes and sort of got into their sort of style of songwriting or whatever, and, you know, the way they play guitar and stuff. And, you know, it sort of rubs off a bit. So now there's a bit of that in what I do. And, you know, so it's just sort of, I think you absorb things from people, like, and situations, you know, like, different people I've played with over the years. It's like, you know, Axe is the perfect example. You know, just there, they've got their own style, and, you know, after spending a few years with them, when I went away, some of that stayed, you know, and it's sort of a part of how I do things now, you know, which is cool, you know. Some people, like, I guess with Antichrist, people quite often say, oh, you know, sounds like Ak or whatever. And it's like, well, you know, look at the drummer, you know.
I was about to say that. In fact, I was going to ask you, I don't know whether I heard this from somebody or I read this somewhere, but was the first Antichrist album, was that meant to be originally intended to be the next Akercocke?
No, there was just some of the tunes on it. Me and Dave had been working on together that were, you know, potentially going to be parts of the stuff that we were working on for the next act release, had it have happened back then. But, you know, when sort of things died off a bit with that band, you know, me and Dave just carried on with the material that we'd been working on. You know, obviously, Jason had a bunch of stuff that they'd been doing, which, you know, some of that saw the light of day, you know, a few years later with their last album. So, yeah, some of it was, you know, like I say, some of that stuff was probably nearly 10 years old. And some of it was more recent stuff that me and Dave had worked on sort of together, you know, just prior to recording.
Yeah. Well, I think you and I actually got in touch when I think I messaged you about the Antichrist Imperium demos, because you guys put up 3 songs. I remember you put up the demo version of Kill for Satan, and that was the one that I just absolutely fucking loved. And you know, like I said, I'm you know, when the album finally came to fruition, you know, I was just really happy to see that you guys hadn't decided to shelve that project. You know, how did it come to be that you and Dave decided to actually turn it into a fully fledged band?
I think because we played a fair bit, and then from memory, I think I just got a bit sick of music or something, you know, not so much music, but I was a bit like, I get jamming and rehearsing and, you know, British winters and all that. I was like, I can't take it anymore. And, you know, we just sort of stopped. But I think we list, like, you know, months or a year or so later, we listened to some recordings of the songs, and or I had, or I think we both heard some stuff, and we sort of you know, got in touch. I'm like, bloody hell, it's, you know, there's some good material there. You know, we really should try and do something. And when we started sort of working on things together, it was a bit more. It was a bit easier, you know, like I had some recording software at home that was pretty good, and technology got a bit better, and reamping guitars and all that sort of business. So all of a sudden, you know, the budget would have been quite a bit lower than what it was, you know, earlier. So it was sort of within reach to do an album. So yeah, we just sort of picked up again, and, you know, Dave was into it. You know, I guess he'd heard the material again and was like, yeah, they are, you know, there's some good stuff. We gotta make it happen, you know. So yeah. But I do remember. I remember when you. I remember you messaging me. I thought about that today, actually, because we hadn't actually, we'd never spoken as such. In fact,
No.
this is the fucking first time we've actually spoken.
Yeah.
But yeah, you messaged me, and I was like, and I think the album was done because from memory, did I send it to you? Send you the album?
So I had the album about a year before it came out.
Bloody hell.
So I was torn whether to include it on my top 10 for that year or wait for the year after.
Yeah.
Which was, it was awesome. I fucking loved that album from the second I heard it. I mean, and it's
Cool.
it's exactly music that's up my street, So it's kind of it's got the brutality and the darkness and the evil in just the right measures. But you moved to. The irony of it is, obviously, with us not having spoken, I now live where you used to live, where you when you were living in London. Yeah. Why did you move over to the UK originally? Because you came here like in about 2005, right?
Yeah, I in Oz, like from, I don't know, the age of 20 or so, 20, 21 maybe, I played with the Berserker. So, we did an album and we played around Oz and all that sort of business. And then we went on like a world tour. So we left the country for like 6 months. So we did a tour in the States, and then we did a tour in the UK, and then we went back to the States and did another tour, and back to the UK and through Europe. So, that was like, it wound up being nearly 6 months. It was about 5 months worth of being away from home. And when I went back to Oz, it was just like, bloody hell, there's nothing to do here. It's just quiet, and there's dozens of amazing bands here and amazing musos. But as far as touring and all that sort of business, it's like, well, there's not really much happening,
Mm.
And I could get a British passport, and I enjoyed my time in England. So I was like, oh, let's get a flight to England and see what happens. So I bought my one-way ticket and turned up. Luckily enough, though, I bought that ticket, but then I pretty much had got the Akercocke gig before I'd even left Australia. Like, I'd been in touch with Jason, and things seemed pretty cool. So I turned up and did a audition, so to speak, and everything was pretty cool. So sort of got the gig, and that's why I bought that ticket, that one-way flight to go to England, 100% just to sort of do music and to try and achieve a bit more than what I could in Oz.
Yeah.
So 10 years, and it got too cold, man. I had to come home.
You would have loved this past weekend, because we had Storm Clara or Storm Kiara. I don't know what the fuck they're calling it, but oh, dude, so fucking miserable. It hasn't actually snowed here for a while, but it's just windy, rainy shit. Typical English winter. But one thing that Jason mentioned to me, I had him over for a barbecue one night, and we got to talking, and this was like probably about 5-6 years ago, and we were talking about how why Akercocke went on hiatus, and why you ended up leaving the band. And I know he said this as a really, really kind of massive compliment to you, but he said one of the things that he started finding quite disheartening was the fact that he was struggling to keep up with you as a guitarist. He said you would write these riffs that were so fucking difficult to play that even if you recorded it and sort of showed him step by step how to do it, he would just be like, I can't act this.
No, which is silly.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, what I love about your guitaring is this. You mentioned before, you kind of draw from this very broad palette. I know you're a big fan of Slash. There was one question I had for you, and I was looking this up on my phone earlier just so I could make sure I get the song title right. But on Golgothian Heros Gamos on the last Antichrist Imperium album, there's a part on there that sounds like it's bordering on Dire Straits, like the sort of clean lead, like really, really atmospheric. Who came up with that?
I think it was me.
It's
Yeah.
fucking fantastic. It's one of the peaks of that album. So I like just literally like such an incredible part, and it comes from complete left field. There's no bands that do stuff like that. Maybe Opeth to a degree, but I mean, I'm not really a fan of anything they've done recently. But yeah, but I just thought it just suited that so well. And as soon as I heard it, I was like, I bet that's Matt, and I bet that's like that sounds like some like a Mark Knopfler lead or something with Dire Straits. It sounds like Brothers in Arms or something like that. But let's talk about some of your other stuff. So I mean, you basically do your job and then you come home and start playing guitar, start recording, or start being in bands until 3-4 in the morning.
No,
because you've got so much shit that goes on.
No.
So Werewolves, you say the Werewolves album is out or it's coming out.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, so that's a whole sort of funny story in itself. So Werewolves is like me and Sam, who's in Antichrist, and Dave, who plays drums for Psychroptic.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a death metal band in Oz called Bremelin, and they've been around for like fucking 30 years or something. And it's quite funny because I joined that band like, when I was 20 or something. And Dave, both me and like Dave's a couple of years younger than me, but the two of us were huge Bremelin fans, like when we were teenagers, like the drumming in the Bremelin was, had a big impact on how Dave plays, and he's fucking out of order as a drummer. So, we, 20 odd years later or whatever it is, we both wound up playing in this band. And through that, it's just a ridiculous story. Dave he lives near where I work, so we just go and have a coffee every now and then. And he had some studio time owing to him, and he said, if you want to, we both fucking love Marduk, and probably me more so. Like Marduk's probably my favorite metal band. But he said, if you want to do a Panzer Division style fucking album, then we'll do so. I'm like, oh, cool. So that weekend, I went home and I had the Monday and the Friday off work. Yeah, sorry, the Friday and Monday off work. So over the course of 4 days, I just wrote that album. I just sat down, fucking bang, 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 got it done. And then sent it to him, and he got the drums recorded like 2 weeks later or something. And, knowing that Sam Bean is like the fucking hardest working metalhead that I'm aware of, I got in touch with him and just said, how you feel about doing some bass and vocals? And he's like, yeah, totally, I'm up for it, brutality, violence. I go, it's total fucking caveman. It's not clever. It's just fucking out of order. He's like, yeah, totally. So, he amazingly somehow managed to learn the songs on bass and write and perform vocals all like in another fortnight or something. So in the case, in the length of about a month, we made a band and wrote and recorded and pretty much sorted out an album. So there you go.
And you say you potentially have a second album's worth of material already done?
Oh, it's half finished. It's pretty much, it's recorded except for the vocals.
Yeah.
So obviously there's no rush in it because the first one's not out yet.
No. But that's the genius of that record, and that you very kindly sent to me as well. It's in how spontaneous it sounds.
I wouldn't call it genius.
Well, that's the thing. It's like it sounds so spontaneous and so violent and just like so relentless. I don't think you could make a record sound that sort of convincingly angry if you spent 6 months recording it. You kind of have to capture the emotion and the mood at the time.
Yeah, it's funny, like what you were saying before about sort of second guessing and throwing material out and all that sort of stuff. With that, it was like just do it.
Yeah.
And I didn't, just didn't think too much about it. I gave it all to Dave, and he come back with it, and the drums are just fucking ferocious, because he's just ridiculous. And it's like, oh yeah, cool. Well, it works, doesn't it? You know, you don't have to think too much about it. It's like, of course it works. All you got to do is fucking blast over it and fucking, you know. And then Sam, you know, he's just amazing. He's the like, if anyone's a genius, it's him. Just purely because of being able to bloody learn, write, and perform vocals and bass for the whole thing, like in such a short time frame. But
I love his vocal performance. I love his vocal performances generally, but one of the things that really stood out to me on that Werewolves album, and I was going to ask you this because I saw your NWA T-shirt that you're wearing. Is he into hip hop or rap as well?
I think he is. We've not really talked about it, but I'm pretty lucky. I know he likes NWA, but everyone likes NWA.
Because here's my theory. I find the best death metal vocalists are guys that listen to, or at least at some point in their lives, listen to quite a lot of rap. When I say listen to a lot of rap, I mean real rap, old school rap. So because they have a way of phrasing and of putting rhythm into their voice to the point where the voice becomes the hook. So it's like, you know, all the old school gangster rap, all the voice was always the hook. Like if you listen to 6 Feet Deep by Gravediggers, or you listen to the first NWA album, I mean, musically, there's not a lot going on. There's like a bass line and a beat and a sample, and that's that. It's the voice that becomes the hook. And on this record especially, Sam does that a lot. So on Dog Knotted, for example, like the chorus, just the way that he kind of sort of plays along with your guitar line, and he's like, Dog Knotted, transformation theory. It's like it's so perfect and so brilliant. But my thoughts were, especially when I saw your shirt, I was like, I wonder whether Sam's into hip hop, because that would prove my theory true. I mean, like I know, like some of the other best death metal vocalists, I know Glenn Benton listens to a lot of hip hop. So you know, and you can hear it, especially in like some of the earlier stuff. You know, he just has a mastery of rhythm in his voice.
Yeah, it's just totally
cut above like the typical. Yeah, there's too many death metal bands where the guy the vocalist is just going, and it drives me nuts. It's unlistenable to me.
Yeah, I think that what I find with Glenn Benton is like when, you know, I think Once Upon the Cross came out when I was 16 or something. And, you know, I heard that was the first one I heard. And then I heard all the early albums. But like after a few years, I hadn't listened to Once Upon the Cross for fucking, you know, talking like 20 odd years or something. And with that album, it's just, I just remember this, that I can put that on and I just know all the words, you know, from that long ago. It's like, you just, the rhythm and the phrasing, everything, you know, it's like, it's all just there. And even you were like, I think even when you were Deicide, like he's still great, you know. He's like just his delivery and phrasing, and he sounds like fucking monstrous as well, which is pretty cool.
I find his voice nowadays is too deep for my tastes. Yeah. I you know, with other vocalists, it wouldn't bother me so much, but I think his performance on the first Deicide album is one of my favorite death metal performances of all time, because it's just so raw and so angry and just so well, like every single thing that I love about death metal vocals is just so prominent on that album. And I don't know if it's just a lot of touring or lots of smoking weed or what it is that got his voice into the state that it is in now. But I do wish that he that kind of high vocal of his didn't go away. But I mean, I completely agree with you. I think, I mean, you can even hear that capability still very present on the new records. I just think, like, musically, the new records just don't do a huge amount for me.
Yeah, I mean, those, you know, them early ones are just fucking magic, you know. And he sounds just possessed, and it's horrifying, you know, like his performances on that. But, you know, I guess anything sort of, well, I guess for me, like after Once Upon the Cross, I still listen to it and I still dig it. You know, there's songs, there's newer songs that I really like, but, you know, it's not something I can put on and listen to all the time.
Yeah. First, I'd say Deicide and Legion are two albums that I'll listen to, I mean, at least once a month, if not once every couple of weeks, to this day. And, you know, I know you and I exchanged messages about some of those stories I was telling on the Malevolent Creation interview about getting into metal in South Africa. How I discovered Deicide was there was a documentary that they screened on TV that my dad recorded as a means to try and get me out of the music. I think it was called "Speak of the Devil" or some shit like that. And right at the beginning, I remember this guy's like standing in front of like a CD burning gathering, and he like talks about how, you know, music used to be risque and edgy, you know, with rock and roll like the Beatles and Elvis, but now it's moved on to extreme occult black metal like Slayer and Deicide. Then they had like an old, I mean, this must be like when they were still called Amon. They had this old clip of them doing sacrificial suicide, and they've got the you know, the lyrics coming down at the bottom. Everyone in the room is horrified seeing it, and I was like sitting there like, fuck, this is amazing. I remember getting a hold of the video and like rewinding that scene to such a point where the tape was all like stretched and stuff like that. So my dad tried to show it to somebody once, like, why is it, you know, what's going on with this tape? It's like, I don't know. I've not watched it since. But Jesus, I must have watched that clip 100 times at least. I couldn't believe that someone could make a lyric as fucking dumb as "Throne of Stone." Sounds so brilliant.
It ain't dumb, it's genius.
I know. Well, that's the thing. It's like it's like so blunt. It just works so well. But yeah, so Werewolves, Antichrist Imperium, you're back with Berserker as well, right?
Berserker's it's a very sort of new thing that sort of a few of the dudes from back in the day like are all sort of getting together and just writing riffs and arranging things, and it's very early days, so I'm not not really sure what's happening with that. We're writing riffs and we're all got a big group chat happening and just discussing things, but it's it's early days, so there's not really much news other than that at the moment with that.
And then what happened to Belligerent Intent? Because I looked that up on Metal Encyclopedia. I saw that according to that, the band split up in I think last year. Right. But I fucking loved the last album. I mean, I know Eternity of Hell and Torment came out in like 2014, but I thought it was fucking brilliant.
Cool. Yeah, I had done those 2 albums with those guys, and it was one of my sort of, well, for me at the time, they were talking about going overseas and playing some shows in the States, and, you know, which I'm up for, but it was exactly the time that me and my partner were trying to buy a house. So, you know, mortgages and deposits and this and that and the other. It was like, I can't do it, you know. But if you guys want to go and do your shows, then that's cool. You know, I'm more than happy for someone else to, you know, step in and play or whatever. And funnily enough, I was, it's kind of hard to think now. I think it's hard to believe now, but I was a little bit sort of over like fucking brutal music. Like I pick up the guitar and it just wasn't happening. I just sort of, just couldn't do anything. So I sort of, you know, in a positive way, just sort of said, "Oh, look, I can't carry on with you guys. I've got nothing left. I've got no more material left." But you know,
the evil has left me.
Yeah, the evil's left. But you know, so at the time I was doing sort of some rock stuff with some guys. So that's, you know, I've done that now. But yeah, I don't know. The fucking evil has returned again. I think I probably just needed a break. You know, a bit like before Antichrist sort of came back and did that album. You know, I was a bit over music, but I think I was probably just a bit over, you know, like brutal death metal for just a couple of weeks until I started again.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I don't think anything that you do, aside from Werewolves, but I mean, that's intentionally so. And even Werewolves still has a very distinct sound. I don't think anything you do would sort of you could class as typical brutal death metal, because I think a lot of what I would class as typical brutal death metal nowadays is boring as fuck. I mean, I've been working on this top 50 best black metal list, and I was saying to my friend the other day, like, I would actually find it really, aside from the classics and some additional exceptions, I find it really difficult to put together a top 50 list of death metal bands now. There's just not a lot coming out that I think is good. I think, like last year, for example, the new Nile was great. The new Cattle Decapitation was great. I'm trying to think how much else I discovered in death metal that I thought was any good. Not a lot.
I think it's, I mean, I'm not incredibly knowledgeable about anything that's happening nowadays. I'm a bit more so than I was, over the last few years.
Yeah.
Maybe Spotify's helped that, it's quite easy to just listen to the new Cattle Decapitation album or whatever. But I think sort of just straight up death metal, it's, there's so many people doing such different things now that it's a bit, you can't, people do whatever they want, of course, but it's not easy to captivate someone just by playing just death metal, Like if you're Nile, then obviously you've got that last album of theirs is just ridiculous. There's a bit of dynamics happening, and there's just like warp speed, bloody guitar and drums, and it's just ferocious. And the same with that Cattle Decapitation album as well. I mean, that just, first of all, that sounds just fucking unbelievable. I don't think I've heard anything that sounds so good. And they've got there's a bit of variation with that. Like some of it, like riff-wise, sounds a bit black metal. And, some of it's just straight sort of death metal, and it's sort of everything in between. And the vocals doing this, that, the other. So it's, from my sort of perspective, it's a bit sort of out of date to just do and I don't get me wrong, I fucking love just simple caveman music, but to just do a straight ahead sort of death metal or straight ahead black metal album, so I don't know.
There is a part of me sometimes that wonders as well, like, do we not have the connection to albums like Legion or Cause of Death, or I mean even Blessed Are the Sick, because of the age that we were when it came out, the time of our lives when we discovered those records. Like if another album like that came out today, would I pay it any sort of attention? And if I have to be very honest with myself, I'm not entirely sure that I would. I mean, and that goes for Slayer, Metallica, for a lot of bands that that I've loved for years and years and years. I feel like a lot of times these guys well, there's nothing new that's coming out that I find interesting. I think they're not looking hard enough, because I think there are bands that are coming out that have just set the watermark so high now for what could be considered good. I'm not sure really, with the exception of nostalgia and, a love that I'll always have for those albums, there's not, they wouldn't be able to hold a candle to what's there now. And that's probably a really clunky way of trying to make a point, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, totally. It's like Slayer for me after Seasons of the Abyss. It's like, wow, I kind of like Divine Intervention, but it's just the magic's sort of gone, But it could be an age thing as well, because like around that's when I was 16 or whatever it was, just being a teenager. And then hearing those Slayer albums and the Deicide and Cannibal Corpse and whomever else, it's like it's a when you hear these things for the first time, it's like fucking wow, Like I think I heard bloody Metallica's The Four Horsemen when I was like in grade 2 or something. It was probably like the first metal that I'd heard, and I heard that intro guitar, and it was just like. It's just magic, the sound of that. It's like, fucking hell, wow. Eyes wide open and like, blah, and that sort of, that was it. It was that sort of caught me. And I think maybe Number of the Beast as well. When I heard that, I was like, wow, But if I was to hear that sort of stuff now, it's like, whatever, I don't know. But having said that, I still want to hear just fucking blasting the whole time. Like I still want to hear Marduk's new album. I still want to, I've got that new Mayhem album, and like, I fucking love that. That's really good. It's probably one of my favorite.
Oh, dude. I am such a fan of that record. I think what those guys did on that album is amazing. I didn't like the new Marduk album as much. I thought my problem with it is it sounded like songs that wouldn't have made the cut on Serpent Sermon and Wormwood, which are my two favorite Marduk albums. I thought that the song Silent Night, the last track, I thought was utterly brilliant. And I was like, why do they just not do more of these sorts of songs? Like, even when they play live, like it's cool seeing them live, but I don't want to hear an entire fucking set of just blasting, because especially live, it gets boring. And you know what the acoustics are like in most of the places here in London. You can't, you get to a point where you can't tell one song from the next.
Yeah, sure.
So if they just like the biggest crowd pop they got by far was when they played the Blonde Beast. Got such a very specific.
It's the disco song, isn't it?
I was about to say it's such a cool tune, but I mean, if they did more stuff like that, or like World of Blades, which is my all-time favorite Marduk song. Can you imagine how cool that would sound on stage if if Mortis is like doing the spoken word thing, like yelling it at the audience? But yeah, they didn't do that. And like I said, there was just some of the magic of Serpent Sermon, World of Blades, and actually Romans 5:12 just missing on this new album for me. You could see sparks of it, but I thought Funeral Mist, that came out like a week later, I thought was way better.
Was that the Singer's other band or something?
Yeah. So I mean, I remember talking to Morgan a couple of years ago, and he was saying that, I mean, the reason why Mortis was chosen to be in the band and to replace Legion was because of Funeral Mist. Apparently, it's like one of Morgan's favorite bands, which makes sense. And you hear the Funeral Mist influence in everything since Mortis has joined, with the exception of the new album, which I think is because he was probably writing a Funeral Mist record at the same time.
Yeah, no, when I heard that, I was like, oh wow, it's like Marduk, but just slightly different path or whatever.
Yeah,
it's the same sort of vibe. It just kind of sounds that's great.
Pure evil. If you haven't heard it yet, you should check out the album that came out just before this new one. So the new one is called Hecatomb. Before that, there was an album called Maranatha that came out in 2009.
Okay.
It's the only black metal album that has probably about a 3-minute sample of a televangelist right at the start of the song, and somehow he still makes it sound like it's the most evil thing on the face of the earth. It is fucking unbelievable. But Mortis, Attila, the two best black metal frontmen of all time. I mean, those guys, what they can do with their voices is just, it's astonishing, absolutely astonishing. This new Mayhem album in particular, I mean, it's the singing and the fucking those sort of double track death metal type vocals that he does, just everything he does to me is just flawless.
Yeah, it's got a real sort of mood to it, There's like there's all the quiet bits, all the ambience that's throughout it. It's just there's a real fucking sense of darkness to it. Really good, man. Proper into it.
I wanted to ask you, the Australian metal scene when you were growing up, and actually when you came back from the UK as well, what was let's start with you growing up. So what was it like when you were growing up in Australia? Because I've always gotten the impression that Australia and South Africa culturally, I think there's quite a lot of similarities. I don't know how into Jesus the average Australian is. They love them some Jesus in South Africa, but it always, I think just maybe the sense of particularly in the time that we were growing up, the isolation, how difficult it was to come by stuff, and sort of culturally how conservative each country is. What were your sort of experiences? How easy was it for you to get into stuff and to discover stuff when you were growing up?
I think it was. I mean, I had a couple of sort of older friends that like brothers of friends of mine that had metal albums and were into sort of whatever bands they were at the time. Just I guess just the usual sort of stuff. Like maybe anything from Guns N' Roses through to sort of Slayer or even Cannibal Corpse. Like a lot of it was just through a couple of friends of mine, and then you just sort of go to the local shops and listen to. You could put the CD on and listen through the headphones, and I never had any money, so I couldn't really buy anything. But I had, friends of mine that would always have CDs and stuff, so I'd always tape things and buy them when I could. But yeah, it's funny, like that Suffocation, that Pierce from Within album, which is just brilliant. I had seen that in the shop for like fucking months, and for some reason I didn't listen to it, or I thought, oh, that looks cool, whatever. But it took me months until I actually heard that album, and when I heard it, I was fucking blown away. I just listened to it every day from then on. But it's just, I lived a little bit out in the country, so not really, but just a little bit sort of away from the towns and stuff. So I think I've heard you sort of talk about this as well. It'd be like I'd walk, 2 kilometres to the bloody, or a mile or so to the bus stop, and get the bus and the train, another bus. Then I'd get to the shopping centre, I'd buy something and go home. One time I saw bloody Australia. Australia's got fucking ridiculous. It's like a bit of a nanny state. So back in the day, there were certain albums that were banned. Like I think To The Mutilated was banned. Punch and Stench, Being Caught Buttering was banned, and there was a shop on the train line that had that used to have import metal CDs, and I went down there one day, and they had Punch and Stench's Being Caught Buttering, which at the time was banned in Oz, and I saw it, I was like, fucking rah, and I remember I went from the shop back to the station, caught the train, caught the bus, walked a mile and a half home, gathered up all the money that I could find, walked a mile and a half back to the bus stop, back to the train station, down the thing, went to the shop, and I still didn't have enough money for it. And I sort of very politely sort of begged the guy in the shop to sell it for just, 60 fucking cents cheaper than what it was. And he sort of looked at me and he says, "Oh, all right then, you can." It was significantly more expensive than just, it was an import, so it was more money. But he sort of looked at me and counted all my fucking pennies that I had and sort of took a bit of pity and gave it to me. So, things like that, it's a bit sort of weird to think back, especially in today's age where it's all Spotify. It's like me spending a whole day to go back and forth and scrounge up just all the copper and all the change that I had and go train it all the way back to the shop to buy this CD. So
but it's like I've said many times when I talk about the stories. In a part of me is really sorry that my daughter and if I have any other kids, they're never going to get to experience that joy, because you'll remember that story for the rest of your life. It's the same as when when I walked in the fucking rain and in the middle of winter to go and fetch Ceremony of Opposites, like the exhilaration when I put that CD on, and I feel exactly the same as soon as I hear the drums in the first song. It's like, fuck, it takes me back to being 15 years old and hearing this for the first time. There's nothing that compares to it. And I think unfortunately Spotify, Tidal, Qobuz, all of that stuff, they're all great. And for dusty old farts like me, it's a really cool thing to have now. But there's nothing that beats the exhilaration of discovery, and that sadly I think is gone from music. I mean, it was even like you talk about buying CDs, just the way we used to treasure them. When you have them, you even get pissed off if the fucking case has got a scratch on. It's like it meant so much to you just to have it. Getting a digipack was the best thing ever. I think my first digipack ever was Wolfheart by Moonspell. I like the special white digipack, and I remember I lent it to somebody and it came back with a little scrape down the side. I mean, and that nearly turned to violence. I was like, what the fuck happened here? Like, you owe me a new digipack, motherfucker.
It was also, I'm thinking back to, being sort of 17 or 18 or so, just the sort of, I guess the magic in going to see bands play, because there's a bunch of really good band, local Australian bands back then. And, it was just like a magical experience to go and see, fucking heavy metal, and, back in the day, in the 90s, it was that we got a bunch of, in death metal sort of peak, a whole bunch of death metal bands came out. And unfortunately, I was fucking underage, so I missed a bunch of them. But I remember I went to the Underage Cannibal Corpse show, and that was just like a fucking life-changing moment for me. And they had an Underage Deicide show, but that got fucking canned. but it got
Oh,
cancelled.
Cancelled.
Yeah, cancelled. The local
You
church.
you were in Akercocke when that you guys were going to play at the Mean Fiddler, and you were going to support Deerside, and Deerside pulled out at the last minute, and then you guys
that was
playing a show.
That was before my time, I think.
Was that before?
Yeah.
Oh my god, that was incredible. There were two Akercocke performances that always stick out in my mind. It was that one, and the one at the Day Into Night Festival in 2007. It was just before Antichrist Imperium came. Sorry, not Antichrist Imperium. The Antichrist came out.
Okay.
And I remember it started with fuck man, what's the third track on Words That Go Unspoken? It'll come to me in a second, but just the way that it kicked off, and Jason's like, nothing can save the Baptist. Unbelievable. I mean, there was like a 2-hour set, and it was fucking incredible. And you were an absolute wild man on stage as well. My question being,
a little bit younger.
Are you still moving around as much on stage when you play?
Probably not, I would say. But I haven't got any hair, so that sort of tames it a little bit.
Yeah.
But you actually get a bit on, all the physical ailments kick in a little bit, so probably a little bit more subdued than back then, I would imagine.
Yeah. Just talking for a second. So I know you mentioned your rock project earlier, and I've heard that as well. And I really like that. And like I said to you, I think you potentially have something really special on your hands there. In terms of possible, radio play and kind of wider recognition. What's the release plans for that record? What's going to kind of in the offing for that project?
We've pretty much just signed a deal with a local sort of, well, actually they're not, it's like a local label, but they've got quite a bit of sort of international sort of activity going on. So I think they're going to, I won't say the name yet because it's a bit early days, but I think their plan is to sort of release 3 singles over the coming sort of maybe 6 months. And probably do videos for 1 or 2 of them, and just sort of see how it pans out, see how it sort of works in a, sort of. I mean, it's funny because it's a whole new sort of ball game for me, because it's not like extreme metal. I'm a bit lost, but we had a chat to the label dude, and he's pretty cool, and he wants to try and push it and see what happens, and should there be interest in a certain part of the world, then maybe focus attention on that area. But so we've done an album, and it's pretty cool. It's just me trying to be Slash, basically.
I was just about to say, for those music videos, have you started practicing playing solos in the desert?
No, not yet.
The November Rain video when Slash leaves the church, and then which was always. I mean, Guns N' Roses made plenty of fucking nonsensical videos, but November Rain by far is the worst.
I've been thinking about it. It's been a topic of conversation, but but we'll see. But Sorry.
Sorry. I was going to ask you something about Guns N' Roses. Did you ever hear about that? I think it was a Reddit thread, or it was on some other forum. It kind of became quite a thing for a while. The whole "choose your illusion." I don't know if you'd call it a meme, but let's call it a project. The "Choose Your Illusion" project, and people would kind of say, okay, if I made one album out of "Use Your Illusion," this is what the album would have sounded like. What would you have said, or what would you say would be essential Use Your Illusion tracks, or Choose Your Illusion tracks?
I've had this conversation with someone before. I honestly think that they're all brilliant except for "Don't Cry." I would just scrap one of the "Don't Cries" because it's just like just different lyrics, I think, isn't it? But other than that, like, I fucking love all of it. I've listened to those, those 2, all of their albums, well, the 3 main ones anyway. I've heard like thousands of times, and like I could listen to tomorrow with as much enjoyment as 15 years ago, 20 years ago, longer. But I wouldn't scrap anything. I love like everything off those 2 albums. with the exception of Don't Cry, I think it's just a little bit sort of soppy for me, you know. I mean, not that November Rain isn't soppy, but you know, it's a bit more epic.
Yeah, no, I agree. But I would say the November Rain version that came out on this limited edition or this deluxe edition of Appetite for Destruction, the acoustic version, I thought that was way better than the original. I don't know why they never kind of kept it a little more stripped down, because I think the song actually sounded better that way.
Mm.
But so I have spent an extraordinary amount of time thinking about this, because I have 2.5 hours to drive up to go fetch my daughter every second Friday, and 2.5 hours back. So there's only so many ways in which I can pass time in the car. So I have got a playlist on Tidal entitled "Choose Your Illusion." Tell me what you think of this. So this is if I were David Geffen and I said to the guys, "This is how that needs to be sequenced. It needs to be only one record. This is how it would sound." So we start off strong out of the gate with Back Off Bitch, which interestingly enough was written originally for Appetite for Destruction, according to Slash's book, which I thought was interesting. Okay, then next, Locomotive, which I always thought was a very underrated Guns N' Roses song.
Yeah, that was one of my favorites when those albums came out. I love that song. Yeah,
that fucking groove that Slash has when he plays the main riff, it's just unbelievable.
Yeah, it's great.
Don't Damn Me.
Yep.
Then we slow things down a tad, so Civil War. And then we gradually sort of ease back into things with Dust and Bones. And then the side one finishes off with Double Talking Jive. So you kind of still have the way that side one on User Illusion 1 ended, you know, that's the right way to do it. You've got the like Spanish guitar at the end. Then side 2 begins with my favorite Guns N' Roses track of all time, Pretty Tied Up.
Yeah, another good one.
Brilliant song. Then 14 Years. Then Garden of Eden. Then The Garden, which is my second favorite Guns N' Roses song. Then Yesterdays. Then You Could Be Mine. And then it ends off with Estranged. And that would have been my Choose Your Illusion. So Don't Cry. No Live and Let Die. And definitely No Live and Let Die. And definitely So Fine is another fucking atrocious song. And as much as I like Duff as a dude, a bassist, and a member of Guns N' Roses, if I were Axl, I would have put my foot down on that. I would have put my fucking my white high top Nike toe down on that one.
Yeah, I agree with you about the Live and Let Die. I forgot about that, but you know that could have been scrapped. Really, I mean, it's cool. I'm into it, but you know, as far as you know, if they could have condensed it into one album, then you know that could have got the flick along with Don't Cry. But The Garden, I love that, and Coma as well.
Yeah, Coma is very good. I was debating on whether that should be included, and I was like, maybe that's for the next album. Instead of Chinese Democracy, you include Coma and many songs like it on that, because Chinese Democracy was abysmal.
Yeah, I bought that. I was living in Kingston at the time, and I went down to the fucking HMV or whatever it was on the day it came out, and I bought it. And I got it home and listened, and I was like, it's all right. I mean, I'm quite into his voice. Like a lot of people aren't, but like I really like his voice. To me, it kind of sounds like I liken his voice to like a Marshall amp that's sort of cranked up just enough to be sort of breaking up a little bit. So it sort of sings, but then when he pushes it, sort of gets a bit dirty and breaks up. That's how I think his voice is like. Yeah. But so I was into like his vocals, but there were some pretty poor songs on that album.
I agree with you. I agree with you about his voice. I mean, I think at his best, his voice is, I think iconic is an understatement. You know, he's like in the same realm as Bon Scott, or I would argue even Robert Plant. You know, just unbelievably unique and special. I'd say one other of my favorite Guns N' Roses songs that's not on that list, but it's a guilty pleasure of mine, and I sing it in the car all the time, is One in a Million.
Yeah, brilliant
phenomenal.
Song. But,
phenomenal.
Because that's not included in the newer. What's the reissue thing they've done? And that's not in it, is it?
Really? Oh yeah. Well, I would assume it's it's relatively controversial.
Yeah,
I don't think in 2020 they're going to be releasing songs that say that sort of thing anymore. But I mean, I always thought it was very misunderstood as well. I mean, I don't think he intentionally meant anything terrible by it. I mean, he was trying to be provocative without a doubt, but at the same time, he's kind of telling us a story about small town mentality in a big city, basically.
Yeah, I mean, on Lies, those acoustic tracks, they're just brilliant, and and that they really sort of showcase his voice as well, because everything's so sort of mellow and sparse musically that there's so much room for him, and you hear him go from just sort of softly spoken to his sort of his screaming sort of thing that he does, it's all there, and it's just I love it. I reckon he's great, I'm really into it.
Which reminds me, another contender for one of the worst music videos of all time, Patience. So fucking bad. I mean, it's so typically 80s, like, them sitting on the stairs and at the end him doing the snake.
Yeah.
All that shit. But it's like he's one of those people where no matter how fucking moronic things are that he does, there's like something that's endearing about it as well.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's of the time as well, that clip.
Yeah.
Like I was. I was a child when I saw that. So I thought it was quite cool.
Well, I think Guns N' Roses for me, as soon as I got into them when I was about 13, and then the next step was discovering Painkiller by Judas Priest, and actually another band I think that drove me to the darkness, which I think their role in conversion therapy is probably slightly overlooked is Wasp. I remember hearing the Crimson Idol for the first time, and I just fucking loved it. And I got into enormous trouble at school as well, because I had this file. One of the subjects I did when I was in my first year in high school was technical drawing, and I had this big file with a Crimson Idol poster up on the side. So Blackie lying, looking like he's crucified. And one day it was break time, and I couldn't see anybody on the grounds, and I couldn't find my technical drawing folder either. So I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Yeah, my girlfriend comes to me afterwards, and she says, "Oh, Jackie, so and so the head girl or some other prefect, she's got your folder. We were all asked to go into the assembly hall. You and your friends obviously excluded." And she brought it up on stage and showed it to everybody. And whilst apparently crying, asked the school to pray for me. So that's the kind of fucking lunatics that I grew up with, which is what I alluded to earlier. But dude, thank you so much. It's been so great talking to you. One of my best mates is actually moving to Australia in June, July. So I'm planning to come and visit him, hopefully inside of a year. If nice. I do, and if we're anywhere near you, it would be awesome to meet up in person. And if you ever find yourself over here, then come around and I'll show you I'll take you back around all the mean streets of Kingston.
Nice one. I think I'm actually we're going to be over there in May. For late May for a week or so. So yeah, man, I'll definitely hook you up. We're going to be up north, but if we get down to London, then I'll definitely keep you in the loop. Yeah.
Well, so if you come down to Kingston again, there's this little arcade near the river, and it used to have like this Italian wine bar and this Mexican restaurant. There's a little place there now called Poor Boys, which is by far the best food you'll eat in London, if not on this entire fucking continent. So, I say continent, I'm referring to Europe. But yeah, if you ever come here, we'll head there.
Nice. Sounds good, man.
Dude, thank you so much for your time. Speak to you soon.
Cool. Cheers.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Nice. To
Thank you so much to Matt Wilcock for joining me for that interview, and hopefully I will have him back at some point over the next couple of months, maybe around the release time of Werewolves. But yeah, such a cool guy, and as I said earlier on in the show, I think his appearance on Into the Necrosphere has been long overdue. Anyway, let's talk about the new Blaze of Perdition. So it is called the Harrowing of Hearts, in case you missed that somehow in the many thousands of times that I've repeated it over the course of the last 2 episodes. It came out on Valentine's Day on February 14th. It has been put out through Metal Blade Records. It is the 5th record by this band since their debut full-length in 2010, Towards the Blaze of Perdition. And incidentally, I will say Towards the Blaze of Perdition would probably stack up fairly highly in my list of favorite black metal albums of all time. So now, all of this being said, you would think that I would go in kind of expecting the band to sort of keep reaching those lofty heights. I have, however, not done so, because if you've listened to anything that they've done since, there has been a kind of a gradual, I wouldn't say necessarily softening of the sound, but certainly a slimming down of the sound. So rather than the kind of chaos and the aggression of Towards the Blaze of Perdition, records like the Hierophant, Near Death Revelations, and especially Conscious Darkness that came out in 2017, have really sort of moved more towards traditional song structures where the riff and the main melody is kind of pushed out quite prominently. The way the vocals are produced, they are really forward in the mix and really in your face. And as I said, the song is just the songs generally are just built around more traditional song structures. And when I say that, I mean structures you would find on a gothic rock record or a punk rock record or whatever the case may be. Pavel actually intimated as much as well when we had our interview. So when you listen to the Harrowing of Hearts, you really do hear that. Now, this isn't necessarily a bad thing, because Blaze of Perdition are one of the bands that can really pull this off extremely well. And if you like Conscious Darkness, for me, this album is really its natural successor. One of the first things that you notice about it, and this is why I said I wanted to wait to hear the record, or to hear a high resolution version of the record. I think I've mentioned this before. I'm a bit of an audiophile, so I have a fairly substantial hi-fi that I've kind of put together over the last couple of years. And when you hear this album, the production is some of the most exceptional fucking production I've ever heard on a metal album, period. Not, regardless of subgenre, death metal, black metal, I have rarely heard an album that sounds this good, where the guitars are kind of thick, dense, but highly articulated. There is a tremendous amount of air between all the instruments. You really can kind of hear the bass separate from the guitar. The drums have a real kind of slam to them. And then Pavel's vocals just sound fucking massive. So, normally I wouldn't go into that much detail about production. And I'm not one of those productions. I mean, I consider myself an audiophile, but I'm not a production snob. I'm equally happy to listen to, early Dark Throne on the hi-fi than I am to listen to something like Blaze of Perdition. But really, for me, on this album, it really, really, really stands out. Now, song-wise, all of the songs, as I've intimated before, follow that typical blueprint of verse, chorus, and then usually kind of a break. But the way that they've put it together, it never feels contrived. It never feels like you've kind of been there and done that. It really still does feel like Blaze of Perdition. And it feels like a very personal album. I genuinely do think, and we touched on it last week in the interview, I think they saw this as a huge opportunity for them. And, it really is. I mean, a band like this, to have gone through everything that they've gone through and then be picked up by one of the biggest metal labels in the world, that's no small feat. And I think they saw it as an opportunity that they really kind of jumped all over. And, I think the results speak for themselves. My personal view is, I think maybe I would have preferred for the Fields of the Nephilim cover not to be the last song on the album. I would have liked it if the album was maybe one track longer, had one extra original track, and then you could have kept that as a B-side or a bonus cut for limited editions of the album. I kind of feel like it breaks things up a little bit after the last Blaze of Perdition song, which is called The Great Seducer. But again, for the most part, I think this is really good stuff. It's relatively accessible black metal, in the sense that I think you could play this to somebody who's not necessarily into the genre, and they could see this as kind of a gateway record. But I'm going to play for you all my favorite track off the album. It's one that they do in Polish. I know that I'm going to butcher the pronunciation of this track, so my apologies in advance to all of my Polish listeners. But the song I'm going to play is Królestwo Niebieskie. Grolestu Nebieski, and I apologize in advance for the way that I have butchered the Polish language, but that is off the new Blaze of Perdition record, The Harrowing of Hearts. It's available on Metal Blade Records right now, and it is well worth your time. Speaking of time, we are out of time. Thank you very much for checking out this week's episode. I hope you guys enjoyed the interview with Matt. I don't actually have a guest lined up for next week, so next week might be the start of my top 50 black metal countdown. So who knows? I've got a couple of interview requests that are outstanding, so if one of those guys comes back, I might delay pulling the trigger on it, but I'm also going to be in Amsterdam for a couple of days. So I might do an episode from the hotel room. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for the support, for tuning in, for your time. From the mean streets of Surbiton on the outskirts of London, I am bidding you all a fond farewell.